Hi, Juno News. Alexander Brown here, director of the National Citizens Coalition, host of Not Sorry. Take advantage of our promo code today at junonews.com/notsorry if you've been enjoying the show. I'm a writer, a columnist, a communicator. I've got a best-selling Substack, and as is the raison d'etre with this show, we speak uncomfortable truths. We cut to the heart of the matter because this is a moment for change, and we've all seen and felt what's going on our roads, and we can all tell that something has gone wrong. It is connected to immigration. We're seeing massive impacts in our trucking industry, as many of you have likely seen, that terrible accident in the United States down in Florida. And take a look at a clip. And since this shocking footage has come out, the U.S. government has moved to crack down on these visas. This man entered illegally, even through a recruiting process to even enter illegally, which shows you the depth of the rot in the industry now today. And Canada needs something similar because we are giving out, it's an extension of our temporary foreign worker program. These LMIAs are going to truckers, many of whom then don't pass the requisite safety inspections and get away with it, who don't speak the language and understand the road signs and get away with it. And there are conversations and actions the Americans are taking now that Canada should too. I've referenced this recently in a tweet that I feel like the Canadian public isn't entirely aware of. When the terrible Humboldt Broncos tragedy happened in 2018, that driver had 70 offenses in 11 days. They were supposed to be off the road. And if they were, if this trucking industry hadn't completely lost its way, if we weren't in the early days of our immigration industry completely losing its way, one of the worst tragedies in the history of this country could have been prevented. Jamie Sarkonic of the National Post is speaking well about this issue too. This is a moment to bring these matters to light. There's an additional great interview I want you to take a look at as well, from Mocha Bazurgan, where he speaks to a trucker named Sonny, who came here 18 years old, wanted to be a truck driver, has watched what's happened to the industry over the last decades, and he's about as candid as it gets. Take a look.
This guy just got caught, but they do this every day. They hit people, they crash into people, they cause accidents, casualties all the time. Since these immigrants started coming here, our truck insurance doubled up.
So do you have a message to what you call the Indian employers? Do you have a message? They're watching you right now. What do you say?
They should go back to their country and start fucking with mine, straight up. You guys destroyed my industry. You guys think you're doing well and you're successful because you're able to get trucks, because you're charging LMI drivers $40,000 to start. That's enough for a down payment for any brand new truck. And then you guys pay them cents on the dollar, even if you pay them. And also you guys neglect maintenance. You guys are not smart business guys. You guys are not good for the industry. You guys are fucking everything up. And the government, I don't know why they allowed you guys to do this, but it's unacceptable. Now think, what if I came into your country and did this bullshit? Would you like it?
So as these issues mount, as we all increasingly have these honest conversations, we need to now turn around and force change with government. We see Michelle Rumpel-Garner told this very show that, she's not optimistic about Canada's new Minister of Immigration. And if the Americans are acting, we have to act too, because anecdotally, we all leave the house and we see that something has gone wrong on our roads. And as things keep going wrong on our roads and getting worse and worse, I knew the guy to talk to. Gord Magill, he's a great writer. We've been talking since the COVID days. He's got a huge book coming out called End of the Road, which promises to not just, make policy recommendations, but name names. He's going to be going at these scummy employers, the government officials who helped make this happen, the lobbyists, the consultants, the drivers themselves, the cowardly politicians. This These are folks who should not be escaping the court of public opinion, and honestly, the courts, given the level of deceased and innocents who are being harmed by this. Gord has also made recent appearances on Tucker Carlson, Steve Bannon. He writes for Newsweek. He's been in the American Conservative of late. He's absolutely everywhere. He's got a great Substack, and so he's the guy to talk to. It's got to be the end of the road for this horrible, abuse of this industry, this indentured servitude that is further undercutting our workers, much like all the abuse in our labor force, in our immigration sector right now, but is making our families less and less safe on the roads. Check it out. Gord Magill joins the show. Gord is a prodigious writer, the expert of experts on this topic, on Canadian trucking and the impacts from immigration. He has driven all over the world and back again, from the ice roads to the Australian outback. He was the guy I thought of when it came to this issue. He's been on Tucker Carlson recently. He's been in Newsweek. He's got a book coming out that we'll talk about that I'm very excited to learn more about. Gord Magill, thanks for being here. And what the heck is going on with your industry?
Well, hi, Alex. Thank you for having me, and thank you to the folks at Juno News. I will alert your readers to the fact that you were one of the first 20 people on my own podcast. So thank you for returning the favor.
There you go.
What's going on? Well, it seems like this issue of very unsafe truck drivers in North America is coming to a head. On Tuesday, August 12th, we had this terrible incident in Florida. It's been one of many, and for the first couple of days after the incident, not much of it was discussed outside of the people like myself who look into trucking crashes, accidents, and the overall health of the industry. 3 days after the accident, dash cam footage looking at the driver was released, I think by my friend Ike at a YouTube channel called Bonehead Truckers, and it went viral immediately. And then the political fight started, because as the Florida Highway Patrol and other relevant authorities in Florida began investigating it, it had all the markings of all of the other larger, bigger scale problems in North America. A guy who came here illegally, a guy that has not assimilated, does not speak English, was issued his CDL illegally by Washington State and then had it transferred to California, and California didn't do any background checks on him whatsoever. And now he's working for one of these sort of scummy little trucking companies that seem to escape any action by the authorities, because we have an issue in the United States called chameleon carriers, some of us in the industry call it, where one organization will have a number of LLCs, and then they use the sort of open market and motor carrier registration numbers in the United States to avoid any accountability. So let's say a gentleman like Mr. Singh would have been involved in more inspections or got caught at scales, truck put out of service, whatever, you accrue points. What happens is that these companies will take the trucks and the drivers and then just switch the name, transfer it to another entity, and keep going, despite the fact they've racked up all their points. Like in the province of Ontario, they're called CVOR, Commercial Vehicle Operator Record. And once you rack up so many points, the government will come in and try and do its best to figure out what's going on, may up their enforcement actions, fines, maybe even pull trucks off the road. That system in the United States has been completely compromised by this chameleon carrier issue. And the chameleon carrier issue overlaps with the illegal immigration issue, because most of the drivers those people employ are recent arrivals who don't understand how the industry is actually supposed to function and what the risks are when they get pulled over on the side of the road by the cops.
Yeah, and it seems like in Canada, on the immigration front, these are also drivers who are products of a labor market impact assessment. Like,
right, the LMIAs.
They have come through the infamous temporary foreign worker program that I've already been talking about a bunch on this show, talking to Michelle Rempel Garner about it as well. I worry about so many second order effects from this, but the moment this crash happened, and I called you on the bat phone and said, "Come on the show," I was brought back to 2018. I get that these are uncomfortable conversations for people to have, but these are moments where we need to be unapologetic. I was reminded of the driver who, you know, wiped out that whole darn hockey team in Saskatchewan. And he I don't think the general public knows this. I've put this in a tweet, but this was in a CBC report at the time, but it generally wasn't focused on as for some reason, you know, the commentariat went all in on like, we can't kick him out. Like that would be downright un-Canadian, which he had 70 violations in 11 days. Some of those were administrative, but it spoke to negligence. It spoke to a company that didn't know its ass from its elbow. It spoke to a callousness. It spoke to a lack of understanding of our roads and processes. He should have been off the road. And
there's some cultural stuff going on here too. On the subject of Humboldt, if I may, that particular gentleman, Jaskirat Singh Sidhu, came to Canada, I believe, as a student. He had done some business or commerce education in India, and he was looking to further it in Canada. And one of the undiscussed items that you have to talk to people in the industry to understand, and you have to talk to some of these Punjabi drivers themselves, which I have done and associates of mine have done, is that they're not coming here to be truckers, right? A lot of people show up here either on a student visa, they go to one of these scammy, dodgy, fake universities like you've covered so well in your writings, and then they find that the job market is not what they were promised. They find that the degree they're getting is not what it was promised. They find that the whole enterprise of moving to Canada is not this like land of milk and honey they were sold by recruiters and other people back home in India. So they look around for something to do. And because the sort of Punjabi community had already sort of made, you know, deep penetration into the Canadian trucking business, it's very easy for them to use their own sort of community contacts to get into trucking. And then they find out, oh, if I keep doing this and do it for long enough, I can get a permanent residency card and get back out of this stupid industry that treats me like garbage and takes me away from home.
Yeah, I was reading on the Harjinder Singh case where he enters America illegally, but like buried beneath the lead is that he still went through like a recruiting process. Like he still had like an intermediary. So you have these entire fraud networks now that are sort of passing along these indentured servants to Western countries. That like he had a recruiter to enter a country illegally. And then Canada turns around and wonders why it has such a problem with inland asylum claims and monkey business and folks sort of jumping job streams when they came over here to study business management at Strip Mall College University. Like that's the worry, right? And so the government would claim, let's say in Canada, that there's a labor shortage, that we have to do things this way. You're a lifelong trucker. You know the industry better than anybody. Is there actually a labor shortage, or is this an excuse?
There is not now, nor outside of two very brief periods in the recent history of trucking, ever been a shortage of truck drivers. Trucking has a retention problem north and south of the border, and the corporate lobby groups who represent the very large carriers have figured out a way to turn their retention problem, which is their own fault, which is the result, I guess, a little bit of market forces, but because they all undercut each other and they don't want to do anything to pay people better or improve the conditions of the job, they have marketed it to the government and to the public as a shortage of drivers. When you look through the issuance of commercial driver's licenses in Canada and the issuances of Class 1s and Class A's in Canada and CDLs in the US, there is always way more of them than there are jobs for those people with licenses, okay? Right. And starting around 1987, we start seeing in the news media these sort of like planted reports from the American Trucking Association saying, hey, you know, we have a truck driver shortage. We need to get more drivers. But what they're not telling you is that that shortage narrative has now been in business for 38 years. But if you know anything about economics, if you are short of something, if you want more of something, you pay more for it, and you use market tools to increase the supply of what it is you want. the trucking industry, acting on behalf of corporate America who want their things moved cheap, has done everything possible to not actually use the market, right? Outside of some niche industries, right? There are certain areas of trucking where there are honest, real capitalists, real libertarian operators who will pay their drivers better, look after them better, and they don't have a retention problem. But all the big companies don't want to do that, so they come to the government saying, hey, we have a shortage, can you help us? So what's happened is a corporate welfare complex has sprung up where all of these truck driving schools exist, right? In order to give people licenses. Nobody ever does any, research on what happens to those drivers. A few people have done it, but nobody talks about it in the media, right? Most truck drivers in the United States enter the truck driving industry and the sort of driver training system via these mega carriers, these guys in the long haul truckload market who have basically pawned off the cost of their training programs onto the taxpayer, local, state, and feds. And then most of those people quit within 9 months to a year. Most of the large trucking companies in the United States have a 100% driver turnover every single year. People quit. Nobody asks, what is the value to the taxpayer of continuing to finance this system of throwing bodies at an industry that does not want to pay more for its own people and does not want to solve all of the problems which are causing this shortage? Now, where it intersects with the immigration thing is this. After many decades of this, Americans and Canadians have gotten wise to the scam, at least on the working class, not the media, not the ruling class, but people who are presented this opportunity to go trucking. They find guys like Steve Shelley and read his book, Big Rig, Trucking and the Decline of the American Dream. They find people like me online and they find out, holy cow, all these people quit after a year and it doesn't actually pay that much. And truck drivers' salaries are half of what they were in 1980 in inflation adjusted dollars. And I have to be away from home all the time. And I have to deal with all these other doofuses on the road that keep getting in accidents. Why would I choose this job? So now that a lot of people are saying, no way, the system has to find new people in order to keep the wages down and not correct itself. So now they've gone through all the domestic people. The government's gotten wise to this in the United States. They've really cracked down on another component to this, which is the independent contractor and lease operator model, where they make American citizens into their own indentured servitude by hanging the note for owning a truck on them, but then the company owns all the cards and basically slave drives them, right? And they're sort of legally obliged to pay for this truck. It's all cost downloading. There have been a number of lawsuits about this, and basically American and Canadian sort of, people that grew up here are like, nope, we're not doing this anymore. So now the system is trying to use illegal immigrants, migrants, refugees, and you see this in America in 2021 during a COVID demand spike. Everybody's at home. Everyone's getting their government dollars to stay home. We're all isolating. So everyone's starting to buy things on Amazon and other online ordering systems. They're buying wood from their local lumberyard and drywall and remodeling, and everyone's buying, but nobody's out there doing. So the demand for trucking went through the roof, right? So there was this huge spike in 2021. Market rates went up. The American Trucking Association comes to the Biden administration, and they are explicit about this. It says in the documentation from the White House's own announcement about this trucking task force, drivers are getting a premium of 7 to 12% on their wages. They didn't explicitly complain about it, but they made it known that that was the actual problem. Everybody is a capitalist until the price of labor gets bid up, right? So the Biden administration and their transportation secretary at the time, Pete Buttigieg, they have this trucking task force. Buttigieg brings his McKinsey consulting buddies in to figure all this out. They get all this expert opinion. One of the people that testified to this task force was a guy named David Carell from MIT. He told the Biden administration point blank, one of the reasons the trucking industry has had all these problems, both with retention and bad driver behavior, is detention. Trucks getting held up at places waiting to load and unload. And by our numbers, that takes 40% of the total physical trucking capacity out of the market every single day. Fix that. All your other problems go away. You don't need to hire immigrants. You don't need to pay for these CDL mills anymore. Just fix the detention problem and all these other problems go away. What do Biden and Buttigieg and McKinsey do? Totally ignore it. They begin to work with about 10 states to reduce the requirements to get a CDL. This has been documented by my friends at American Truckers United, this organization in Arkansas. They went and did all the research and showed, using the government's own data, massive spikes in the issue of CDLs, but there was no increase in driving examiners, DMV personnel, or training schools. None of that was increased, and in fact, it had been decreased because many of these places were closed because of COVID. Where did they get the extra 450,000 CDLs in 12 months? They didn't get them domestically.
So it's really this, gosh, we've seen it in so many streams, these, especially coming out of COVID, where it's like you've given an inch and people have figured out how to take a mile.
Many
It's
miles.
Yeah, you have the, the big consultocracy can efficiency culture the heck out of this. And I would very much like the opportunity here to do a McKinsey episode and to do a Dominic Barton episode and to go into this, because what you're describing too, I've written about this quite recently in the Hub, and part of my work with a group called Project Ontario is this also sounds like the student summer job market. This sounds like what's happening to young men, or unemployment in Canada with young men, and particularly Ontario is like at super duper record highs. And it's just, why can't you just pay them a little bit more?
Can I share something even more insidious that's connected to the trucking thing in the U.S.?
Absolutely.
And I believe it's going on in Canada as well. I just wrote about this on my Substack. These guys are so brazen now. Like you mentioned that there was a recruiter, consultant, immigration person that helped the Singh guy get in, even though he was an illegal.
Yeah.
There are these small trucking companies now run by all these migrant groups. And it's not just Indians. It's guys from Russia, Uzbekistan, Central America, all over the place. They have just decided that the United States trucking market is theirs now. Okay. They advertise in Facebook groups, and they are implicit, if not explicit, in their advertising saying, we offer flexible ELDs. The ELD, electronic logging device, in 2017, the American government was like, we have to do something about road safety. We are going to make all truck drivers have a government-mandated electronic tracking device to monitor their hours put in their trucks. Canada now has the same. It was immediately apparent that produced the opposite, because they didn't address the economic circumstances, right? So crashes go up, speeding goes up, aggressive driving goes up, all these things go up. What these foreign companies are offering is they're telling the people they're hiring, we have backdoor guys that will get in and adjust your hours so that you can keep working for 18 or 20 hours a day. And if the cops pull you over, we've taken it out of your ELD for you. Oh, and where are all of these ELD backdoor operations located? Serbia, the Ukraine, Russia, Colombia, the Philippines. These guys are everywhere interfering with the sort of safety monitoring that's supposed to be going on in the North American trucking industry. And when they hire drivers, they are telling them, hey, you can run 4,500, 5,000, 6,000 miles a week, right? And then when you call them, a fellow sort of trucking social media guy started calling these guys. He comes to find out he has to pretend to be somewhere else. The first question all of these companies ask you, where are you originally from? Because if you're an American or a Canadian, they don't want you, because they know they won't be able to slave drive push you to work over your hours. Yeah. Their entire business model relies on abusing their own co-ethnics that they've hired through nepotism networks, and then make them work twice as hard as the people that are already working twice as hard as everybody else. Truck drivers are restricted on their hours of service in Canada to working 70 hours a week, which is like 80-90% more than the average person working 40 hours a week. And then these foreign gangsters come in and say, no, we have to double that again as a condition of your employment. So who do they get? They get their fellow migrants from other countries who don't know any better, work them like dogs, and then what happens? They crash all over the place because they're falling asleep at the wheel. They don't know what they're doing to begin with. And here we go, death and carnage all over our roads.
And I find it unconscionable still that we see, opinion columnists and lobby groups, particularly in Canada in the major papers of late. You'll see like the Globe or the Star saying, oh no, this is actually a good thing. Like, don't you dare sort of cut down or don't yank back on the taps here, while it's still going full blast. It's even if one just wanted cheap replacement labor, that's one thing. Even if one was willing to look away from public safety, and they sure shouldn't, because we all see the videos and we all see the rise in accidents. And anecdotally, you just leave your house and you go, well, I don't remember this many, trucks hitting overpasses and seeing so many dodgy passes on the highways. These guys are also being worked to the bone. There's already this humanitarian aspect of like the kind of conditions. And so we are seeing the American government crack down on these lousy licenses and practices. Sort of. Maybe it's just symbolic to start.
Yeah.
To the Canadian audience, what would you do right now? Let's say you're in government. Guys like you should be, but I wouldn't want to wish that on you also. Pit of vipers and all that. What would you do right now to clean up the trucking industry and to make Canadian roads safer?
Oh boy, man. I would go to every province and say you're not allowed to let people do the driver training in their own language. There's this crazy idea where they can go through all the stages of their theory test and their training, and then finally they always say, well, the test is done in English. Okay, so they did 90% of everything up to their driving examination in their own language, and then all of a sudden they have a full command of English again. That would end tomorrow. Canada's 2 official languages, French and English. Pick one, go do your test. That's it. That's all you get. Also, I would immediately impose a graduated licensing system like they have in Australia and New Zealand, where you do not get to go from driving a car and switching that license to a Class 1 in British Columbia or Western Canada or Class A in Ontario, which allows you to drive a Super B train, such as the unit that Jaskirat Singh Sidhu crashed into the Humboldt Broncos hockey team. That would never have happened if we had a graduated licensing system. That would never have happened if we still had trucking kind of run as a guild where the companies in the business would police themselves. That's what used to happen in the 70s and 80s. If you didn't know how to fix a truck, change your own tires, be able to communicate with people, nobody would hire you. If you didn't have any business acumen or experience in the industry at all, when you went to a financing company to buy a truck, they would laugh you out the door. Why are we giving you money for a truck? You just showed up here yesterday and you have no idea what you're doing. Get lost. So another component here that many people don't understand is that the services which are behind trucking are in on this. The insurance companies, the finance companies that lend people money for equipment, there's no barrier to entry with that. They just throw money at these guys without any vetting, without any concern that they're ever going to get paid back. Those used to be the barriers to entry to get into trucking, never mind the sort of deregulation that took place. That's sort of separate. But, nobody would give you money to get into the business if you had no idea what you're doing. Now, the business has been completely taken over by people that have no idea what they're doing because of ease of credit and ease of financing. I would tighten that up immediately.
Yeah. The rot runs deep. Gord, I'm deeply thankful for your common sense voice on this. This is obviously a moment to push and to course correct because people are dying. And we all have camera phones. We all at scale. We all have camera phones. We all have dash cam video now, and we can see it. Governments can't ignore it. And so, where can people find more of your writing? And then tell us more about the book.
Okay, so you can find me at autonomoustruckers.substack.com. I host the Voice of Gord podcast. My podcast is hosted there. I do a lot of my writing there. I've written for Newsweek, The American Conservative, The Blaze. I've been asked to write trucking stuff all over the place. I used to work for a think tank in DC called American Compass. I wrote for them. The book will be out in March 2026. It's called End of the Road, Inside the War on Truckers. And it's going to be a broad overview of what's happened since the deregulation of the Motor Carrier Act of 1980 and today, and why it is we went from a decent industry that looked after its drivers, who are considered the knights of the road and everybody respected, to now when you see a truck on the highway, you have to stay far away from it because it might kill you. How did we go from there to there? Why did that happen? What are the economic and policy forces behind it? What has become of the North American trucker in 2025? It'll be publishing in March.
Gord Magill, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you for watching Not Sorry on Juno News. I've been Alexander Brown. Take advantage of our promo code at junonews.com/notsorry, and I'll see you next week.